Welcome to my second Chiang Mai vlog. If you haven't gone and watched my first one, I will link that right somewhere up here. That one is about just generally exploring Chiang Mai, what Chiang Mai is like to walk around in the old town, and then also going on the river cruise. This one is going to be all about the Chiang Mai temples that I went and visited. First of all, I'm going to give you some general info about what you should expect at the temples, and then I'm going to go through each of the 8 temples that we visited and let you know kind of like what each one was about, so you can kind of make up your mind about which ones you want to go see. So first of all, what should you wear to the temples? I made the mistake of showing up for the temples on the first day in a sleeveless dress that went just above my knees. So this is bad for a couple of reasons. Basically, if you are a woman, you need to cover your shoulders and you need to cover your knees. If you're a guy, you also need to cover your shoulders, but they're very, very lenient about the knees with men, I've noticed. Like, Eric kept walking into temples and he was in shorts and no one said anything, but I would be in a dress and we'd be right next to each other and they'd say, "You need to cover your knees," to me, not to him. So there is a little bit of this like double standard as far as like who's, which sex is supposed to wear what, but whatever. I'm not going to disrespect someone's religion, so I covered up. When you first walk into the temples, it's going to be pretty obvious because there's signs out, but in all these Thai Buddhist temples, you take your shoes off. Basically, everybody visiting this temple is walking around barefoot. Unlike Chinese Buddhist temples, photography actually is allowed inside of the worship hall that has like the big Buddha. In China, I've noticed every single one of these places where anyone is like bowing down and praying to the Buddha or whatever, it says no photography allowed. And in Thailand, I noticed photography was totally fine. Couple things to know about going to Buddhist temples: try not to point your toes at any Buddha figure or monk, and then also try to keep your head lower than the Buddha figure or the monk figure. The last rule is just generally keeping quiet, and then don't make out with your boyfriend or your husband or whoever you're with. Okay, so specifically about Chiang Mai temples, there are a lot. We went to 8, and I was looking on Google Maps trying to figure out which ones we went to and get all the names and everything. I could not believe how many temples there were that we didn't go to. It's just overwhelming. From the little bit of research that I did about these temples, I noticed that most of them were founded or started to be built in the 1300s. So they're all around 600 years old, 600, 700 years old. Anyways, I've talked too much. Let's get into the temples. We went to 8 temples. The first 5 were within the old town city walls, and the last 3 were outside of the walls. So the first temple that you're seeing right now, I am not going to pronounce any of the names of these because I am not helping anybody by doing so. So this first temple was actually free to get into, and it was really close to our hotel. So the very first time we started walking around Old Town, this is the first temple we ran into. And so for me, it was a really great temple to start with because it's not too overrun with tourists, it's not too big, not too small. I don't think it was anything remarkable, but it was definitely really beautiful there, and I really liked the elephant, that old stone chedi, I think it's called. Sometimes it's also called a stupa, but in Thailand I believe they're called chedis. The second temple we went to is very, very, very small, and it was also free. We did not go inside the worship halls of either of these 2 temples because we were not dressed properly. This one is right next to the Three Kings Monument, so it's in central Old Town. Personally, I don't see the point in going up to it unless you just are generally intrigued by it like I was. It's really not that crazy. Now we're getting into the really good one. So this temple was also free. It was right next to the big main temple within the old town, which is going to be right after this one. I did really like it because of all the dark wood, and there were so many flags. One of my favorite things about Buddhist temples is the sound that all the flags make when the wind is when there's a little breeze. It's just the most peaceful, it feels good. I love that sound. So the fact that there were that many flags there made it even more special to me. So it was a really cool temple. I'm not sure that it was necessarily the coolest. Now this temple, this is the biggest. So basically there were 3 separate temples in this area, and they merged them all together and created this massive temple complex. It's not massive like Angkor Wat massive, but it's and it is within the old town. It's very central, but this is probably the biggest one inside of the old walls, and it's also the most popular. So there's going to be a lot more people there than at the other temples that I've mentioned so far. It costs 30 baht to get in. And then I ended up purchasing or renting like a thing to cover myself, a robe, for, I don't know, I think it was 10 or 20 baht. I rented one because I was not prepared at that point. So like I said, this is the most popular and the largest temple within the old town. And personally, for me, I would call it a must-see. Like, the reason you have to go see this temple is because of the really old stone chedi in the very center. Or it might not be in the very center, but it's big and very obvious. You won't miss it. I'm not completely sure why it looks the way it does, but I know that it's really big just because, like, the bigger you make it, the, like, more honorable it is or whatever. And a chedi is essentially a structure that houses some kind of, like, Buddhist relic, usually a body of someone that they really highly respected. The next temple. This one and the next one we did not really plan out. We just kind of took a tuk-tuk ride around, and he's, like, dropped us at these two random temples, and but this one cost 30 baht to get in. I'm pretty sure, I can't remember if it was 30 baht or free, but personally I don't think it's that necessary to see. I wasn't blown away by it. It's kind of like a mixture. It's got like some old stone stuff and some really shiny new gold stuff. I didn't really find it to be like that unique or exciting. Alright, so we're getting into my 3 favorite temples now. These are all outside the city walls. So the first one was 30 baht to get into. You're noticing a theme, I'm sure. They're all either free or they cost 30 baht. And 30 baht is very, very small fee. In US dollars, 30 baht is 87 cents. So it's really not that expensive to go into any of these temples. This one is outside the old town walls, but I really think you should try to make it out there to go see it because there's this really, really cool, basically a cemetery there. The cemetery was like this big area of like white stone structures, and they all kind of like went together, but they were all slightly different, and you kind of walk around. It's just this really eerie, like special, like, I don't know, it's like this crazy feeling when you're in there. It's hard to describe. It feels like old and important. I looked this up later, and basically these structures are mausoleums containing the ashes of the members of the Chiang Mai royal family. Not sure from what era, but they were from the royal family of Chiang Mai, probably through the generations. There's quite a few of these structures. And then there's one massive, massive chedi. And I think the rumor is that like part of Buddha himself is inside this chedi. I don't know. So, the next one is really outside Old Town. So it is a little bit harder to get to, and it will cost you a little bit to just get there, but it is only 30 baht to get in. So the expense is in your transportation to get there. I believe there's a bus that goes up there, and I know the taxis will take you, and I know you can try to bargain with them, and I've heard of people getting ripped off. We just went ahead and treated ourselves, and we got a private car. So this guy actually was basically a tour guide, and he was really nice. It was a super nice air-conditioned car. He like picked us up. You know, we hardly had to do any like work. He did it all for us, and he explained everything, and he actually gave us a really genuine like local Buddhist, because he's Buddhist, a really like local view of this temple. So it was really cool because he encouraged us to do like is it three? The three like clockwise rotations around the like big chedi, and then he had us go inside of this one, like, sorry if you can hear what's happening outside. He had us go inside this like one worship hall with a Buddha, and when we were standing, he's like, sit down, kneel down, kneel down. And so we kneeled down, and then there was this monk in there, and we were supposed to kind of like lower our head towards the monk, and the monk like basically like spritzed us with holy water and said some stuff in Thai, and then we got these little strings tied around our wrists, and there we were, blessed by monks. So it was really cool to have this guy helping us, because I never know what's appropriate in a Thai Buddhist temple and what's not, so I tend to err on the side of caution, and I think I miss out by doing that. So it was cool to have that private driver, and we just booked him through the concierge at our hotel. This temple though is huge. It is on the top of a mountain. I think it's about 600 years old, and it is definitely the most popular one in Chiang Mai. It's a must-see. I think you really do need to go see it. The views of Chiang Mai from up top are pretty cool too. If you hit it on a clear day, you can see a lot of the city. It's really awesome. And there's just a lot to see in that temple. It's really cool. It's kind of overwhelming, the number of things inside. But I really genuinely loved that. I don't like the gold usually, but I liked that center area. It just felt like important. Oh, P.S. it requires a few hundred steps up some stairs to get to it. So the last temple that we went to is my all-time favorite Chiang Mai temple. I do not think any temple in Chiang Mai will ever beat this one. It's called, I think it's pronounced Wat Umong. It was free to get into, and not very many people go to this temple. This is not a tourist area. This is kind of a place that real locals go to. So it was really cool, and I made it so worth it to get the private driver, because we were told about it by a local and then taken there by a local. If you're a tourist and you're going on tourist sites, you might not discover this. I don't think there's really any buses that go out there, so I'm not really sure, but it was my favorite. It is 700 years old. And it has these ridiculously cool Indiana Jones-like tunnels that you walk through, and they're really low. Eric had to crouch most of the time. So you take your shoes off before you go through these old, dark, musty tunnels, and it's just a really cool feeling in there. You're walking through these tunnels, and then you go up these mossy kind of steps up to the Chedi thing, which is this old stone, and you're just barefoot walking around. I don't know, it's just really cool. It's definitely more natural and historic feeling than the other temples. There's not a lot of gold. It's more about the old stone and the trees, and then there's some art in there as well. I believe they were painted by monks, but don't quote me on that. I also heard that this is a meditation retreat area. If you need to do some really intense meditation, this is the area you go to in Chiang Mai. They have a hall dedicated to it. So those are all 8 temples that we went to in Chiang Mai. I hope you enjoyed hearing about them. If you have any questions, please let me know. And if you've been to Chiang Mai, what was your favorite temple? If you have not been to Chiang Mai, which temple did you like the best from this video, and which one would be your first one that you'd go to? Comment that down below. If you haven't seen part 1 of my Chiang Mai vlogs, I will link that right now. And you can stay tuned for part 3, which is when we took a cooking class in Chiang Mai, which was really fun. So stay tuned. I'll have that up very soon. And thank you so much for watching. Bye. Hey, no.